Hi, everyone. My name is Chris McGinnis. I'm head of strategy at Temenos. It's actually going to be slightly different than what was on the agenda. Aaron Fethian, who runs our marketplace, was meant to do this presentation. I'm imagining a lot of you may know Aaron. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here. I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I'm going to give you some of the thinking which led to us launching a fintech marketplace. So Aaron runs it. He could tell you, the lessons learned from that. That'll be part of what I cover, but it'll be more the thinking and the strategy that went behind us launching that. So quickly, what I want to cover today: brief intro into Temenos for those of you that don't know us as a company. Our insights into where we think the banking industry is headed, and the reasons why we think launching a marketplace was essential. Our approach to innovation as a company, and then ultimately some details around the marketplace that we've launched. Quickly, on Temenos as a company, I imagine some of you, but probably not all of you, know us as a company. We are a banking software company. We're an established fintech player, if you will. We've been in the banking industry for over 20 years. We've got over 2,000 customers, mostly banks around the world, using one of our pieces of software. Everything from 38 of the 50 largest banks in the world use one of our products, down to some of the smallest microfinance institutions in the world. And we really are global, with banks in over 150 different countries using one part of our software. Here's a quick selection of some of the banks that use our software, from some of the biggest names, as I said, in the world to some of the smallest. I think the fact there are about 2,000 of these customers that use our software puts us in a unique position whereby we have that sort of critical mass of customers already. And looking forward, we have to balance their needs and where they need to go as an industry, but also trying to attract new customers at the same time. So it's a really balance of giving existing customers who are already using our software what they need, but also fulfilling the needs of the industry as a whole. So now I'll give you some of our insights into the banking industry, how we thought about it as a company, with the ultimate result being launching our marketplace. The previous presentation, he talked about castles, so I'll pick up on the same analogy. Banking. This is what the banking industry used to look like. Nice, comfortable castle, nice moat all around it. That moat is things basically as a high barriers to entry, regulation, all the investments banks had made into infrastructure, basically made it very, very hard for anyone to penetrate and get across. It was very hard for new entrants. It basically made life cozy for banks. So for a long time, banks really had it easy, almost up until the time around the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. However, banking today looks much different. Something like this. It might feel like the industry is under siege. People are coming at it from every angle. You could summarize that in a number of different ways. I'll loosely group it into two main things: technology, all the stuff we're probably getting a little bit sick of hearing, mobile data, all these things. But it's really made new business models in banking possible. It, in theory, allows banks to leverage these technologies. You could argue, however, how many of them are doing it, but they can leverage these technologies, but also gives way to new competition. So all in all, technology is making new business models possible. As well, regulatory changes, PSD2, one of the reasons we're here today, others such as Basel III, are all effectively making a change in business models a necessity. So we did a lot of work, I often get, when I show those two slides, like, so what? Why does it matter that banking is under attack? Well, this slide here shows why it matters. That first blue bar with the 16%, that is the profitability of the banking industry when I showed that first picture of the castle with the nice moat around it. When that was how the banking industry looked, it was great. Profits were high. Banks could just tick along doing things as they were. It didn't really matter. They were under no pressure to make any changes. However, we're in a different world now. The financial crisis hits. Profits in banking plummet. A lot of people said, oh, that'll be temporary. Once we get through this, profits will return to the pre-crisis levels. well, you know what, it's been the better part of a decade now, and profits have never returned to those levels, and profits at these levels are not sustainable for the banking industry. So for technology, and I think all of us in the room today, is one of the ways to enable that improvement in profit in a sustainable way for the banking industry. So a lot of the work we did is we tried to, as a company, as we set our strategy, we tried to determine where we think the banking industry, ultimately our current customers and prospective customers, where is that going, in the future, and then we need to align our product roadmap and all the decisions that we make accordingly. So we've simplified it down into effectively what we think companies that want to operate within banking or financial services need to operate in one of 4 different business models or strategies. I'm actually going to talk about 3 of them. The one I won't talk about in too much depth is traditional universal banking. Our view is that that model is largely dead, if you will. We don't think in the long term banks will be able to sustain that type of business model. We think one of the other 3 are the ones that will need to be followed if you are to be successful. The first is effectively acting as an infrastructure player. So fairly low margin, low breadth of scope business, effectively acting as the back end, having a banking license, huge scale, probably owning or operating either their own core banking system or a third-party core banking system from a vendor such as Temenos, but not owning that actual customer interaction. So just doing the back end and not owning the customer interaction. The outcome of that is relatively low breadth of scope and a relatively low margin business in terms of profitability. The next option would almost sit on top of that infrastructure model is a fully fledged aggregator. And by aggregator, we effectively mean aggregating together all different products that are offered in the marketplace. Probably some of your own built products, but a lot of third-party products as well, and acting as some type of a reseller perhaps. But again, leveraging the infrastructure of someone on the first slide that I mentioned. And the third, which is what we think is, we'd say is the preferred model, is a vertically end-to-end IT infrastructure. So having the infrastructure on the first slide, also having that customer interaction, having your own product factory. We feel there's certain things the banks will need to continue owning, such as a current account and secured lending. But that's a relatively thin offering, if you will, that will come from the bank itself. Then everything else around it is being open. So being open and having all these different providers that seamlessly blend into the bank and give you that offering that you can go to the market with to customers. Over time, so there's all kinds of logos on here of the different vendors. Over time, now this may be controversial, we'd actually think some of these startups and perhaps some of the people in the room, investment may move from the branding, which a lot of the investment today by these companies is spent on branding, to actually be spent even more on the product. So that shift could go even further towards the product, as your brand may not even be aware. So you may go to a bank, use a currency transfer, and it doesn't really matter who it comes from. That'll seamlessly happen. One of these companies will likely be providing it, but they'll free up the investment to even further improve the products, perhaps generate lower costs and lower price for end customers. So ultimately, those are the 3 different business models we think will need to be followed, one of the 3 over time. So those together help found the thinking of the company in terms of the need to continuously innovate, and that's what we need to think in terms of where we have to get to make sure we're offering the products that will allow whichever those business models you want to follow. So now a little bit on our approach to innovation. This is how we used to and still approach innovation. This is just some of the things as a company we've delivered over the past 20 plus years. And what's mostly interesting is we did largely all of this ourselves. We'd either build it in-house or in some instances acquire other companies that had some of this functionality. But we were very much like the banking industry. We tried to do everything ourselves. However, going forward, that doesn't work. This pie chart was a Capgemini study showing your view of asking banks their view of what they thought of the fintech space. I'm not sure who actually said irrelevant. I think that's a little extreme. But what was interesting is that the majority of them see the fintech industry as a partner. They don't necessarily see them as a competitor anymore. That's changed over the last couple of years, but they see them as a partner. So I think we needed to realize at Temenos and the banking industry as well that we need to work with others. That roadmap where in the past we delivered everything ourselves, that's not enough anymore. You need to work with others. You need to have others feed into your products to give, basically our end customers, to give them everything they need. So there's 3 things we've done around that, working with others, so that we're continuing to do our own product development, so that roadmap continues. But there's 3 things that I'll mention that we're doing, working with the broader community, and then I'll focus on the marketplace in a bit more detail. The first, we've launched a fintech incubator in Switzerland. It was the first of its kind to be launched in Switzerland. Second, I mentioned our large customer base at the beginning. We have 2,000 customers, so really engaging with them to create different communities. We've launched these things called innovation jams. They're hosted by Temenos and our partners. Different startups can present their ideas. The winners actually travel to our annual customer conference and present. We also sit on advisory boards of some of our customers, digital advisory boards, innovation advisory boards, to try, to get their ideas. It's all about sharing. They get our ideas, we get some of them, and we can really, again, move forward together. And the third way is our marketplace, which I'll focus on for the rest of the presentation. But it's effectively what it sounds like. It's a cloud portal for apps. And for us, it's the easiest way for our customers to look at what's out there and what works with our software. So taking a slight step back and just looking, so where it says suites on the far side of that slide, that is, Temenos has this sort of stood full front to back banking software offering, from core banking and payments in the back end to digital channels and a user experience platform at the front. So that's what we offered. But when we were setting our strategy, and once we determined that vision of where we thought banking was going, what we decided, what the missing part was, that we needed a marketplace. We needed that connection from the banks and our software to these third-party providers of different types of functionality that we didn't offer as part of our product. So that led to us, launching this marketplace through APIs, allowing our customers to access third-party applications and products, even potentially over time, including things that are not non-banking related. Quick overview of how our marketplace works. Anyone who's interested can have an initial meeting. We'll supply you with some Temenos software in a sandbox environment running in the cloud. You have time you'll have a play around with that, see what works, how easily it can integrate. Within the matter of weeks, you can go through that testing, and we'll certify you, and you can be up and running. Currently, our marketplace, we're still in the ramp-up mode. We have about 80 products from 20 different providers available on the marketplace. And we've got a big backlog, I think, which is the more exciting part. There's 150 plus companies are in that backlog looking to be a part of the marketplace. And my final slide is for anyone who's interested. The link is there at the top. And as I said, it really is about a community. It's our 2,000 plus existing customers today going on there, trying out different things, feeding back what works, what doesn't. And the goal over time is to have this virtuous circle where there's this continuous feedback loop of our customers trying things, feeding back what they like, what they don't like, and then providers constantly innovating and providing new things that work with our software. So that's it from me. If anyone has any questions. Any questions? I thought that was your job.
A couple of questions, anyone? I thought when you were showing the 3 possible business models in the future, how receptive are banks to hearing that at the moment?
Some more than others, I suppose. I don't think. I think a lot of them realize their current business model may not apply or may not be viable in the long term. But there's a huge range. Some are very receptive. They may not agree exactly with that quadrant of 4 options that we have, but I think a lot of them realize they need to change something. It's been slow going, but we've had some big customers start to think much more future looking.
It's not dissimilar. The E to E model that you showed at the end, that was sort of similar. It was similar information as what we saw from Starling Bank, but in a different visual format. But it's pretty much the same information there, as far as those additional services. Where does it fit with the balance between the technical side? So we heard from Eric, for example, this morning talking about the microservices and introducing the sort of architecture that makes sort of composable options available in your business model.
Yep.
How much of that needs to be in place in order to have those discussions about which business model do we want to go after? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of a tandem.
Yeah, so our view as a company is that it's the full infrastructure, the full architecture that you run over time needs to be flexible enough to run some of these business models. So you need to have a real-time core banking system with straight-through processing. Probably running in the cloud over time. Not many banks are there today. But that at least needs to be, I think, part of your thinking over the long term, and in order to be able to get there to facilitate these these different business models. And with these business models, we really are thinking into the future, right? No bank is there today with that ideal, vertical end-to-end. No bank is truly doing that today, at least none of the established banks. So it's really somewhat of an ambition to get there. So it's about taking the steps over a long period of time for banks to get there to enable them to achieve that.
Okay, great. Any last? No? Oh, yeah, we have one. Great.
Hello, Christopher Trajan Tief, and actually ex-Temenos employee once.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that's why the question I have, I know that basically Temenos do have the enterprise framework, and actually how much of this framework is available as part of the platform that you can try to connect to. And basically, I know that, for example, after John Schlesinger, actually,
yep.
Interaction and integration is differentiated by Temenos as 2 completely different things. And actually, you have separate representation in your platform. So how much of it is available for people to try and to integrate to?
Yeah, so as I say again, I'm not the most techie person, so someone can give you more details on that. But through the version of the Temenos software that's available, running in the cloud in a sandbox environment, allows you to play around with those concepts. The extent to which I'd have to get back to you on it. Perhaps there's someone else here who could help you with that. But yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Chris.
Great, thank you.